Yeah, hey, everybody.
Hi, nice to be back. I actually graduated from HBS in 2017, so I have fond memories from this campus, and I'm really excited to share the stage today with Steve. I think Algorand is one of the most exciting projects in the space, and hopefully you get a good taste and some insights into what they're working on. But why don't we start off with Steve? Can you please give us a quick background of your career leading up to joining Algorand?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. Started several companies. Two of them have gone public. The most recent one was Fuse, where we raised about $500 million. It's a 700-person company today in the collaboration communication space. I think definitely, one of the things we've focused on in Algorand is not only bringing great tech, but bringing business people together that have experience scaling companies. So, it's been fun so far.
And Steve, given your background as a business leader across multiple companies, what got you so excited about crypto to leave what you're doing and join Algorand as a CEO?
Yeah, I started my first company when I was 19. It was early days of the internet, so mid 90s. And I think what's going on in the blockchain and crypto movement to me is the most similar in terms of dynamics that I've seen in sort of the 20 years since. And so for me, there was definitely some pattern recognition that something really interesting was going on. And fortunate to get introduced to Silvio and a number of interesting people as I started to learn more about the space.
And maybe give a quick background of Silvio, or just a quick intro to Silvio.
Yeah, well, so for people who don't know, Algorand was created first as an academic paper by Silvio Micali. Silvio is, I think, by all accounts, one of the founders of modern cryptography and has invented a lot of the cryptographic primitives that people use every day, things like zero-knowledge proofs or verifiable random functions. And what Silvio really felt was while there was a lot of innovation and interesting work going on, especially around Bitcoin and Ethereum and others, that if you're really going to scale a platform to hundreds of millions or billions of people, you needed to come up with a fundamentally different approach. And so, Algorand really is a ground-up rethinking of how you create a foundational blockchain and layer one protocol.
So I remember in December 2017 and January 2018 in San Francisco, if you were at a workout class, the two people next to you would be checking Coinbase every 5 minutes to refresh on prices. And so obviously the industry has seen a very volatile expansion and contraction over the last 18 months. As CEO of a growing crypto project, how do you deal with that volatility and deal with the prices and kind of block out some of that noise?
We hadn't noticed. No, I'm just kidding. Look, I think for us, we actually see it as a positive. When there's so much noise in the market, it's hard to really identify who's serious. And I think one of the big things that we want to bring into the market is credibility, that we'll deliver when we say we will. We'll bring the tech actually out and be focused on that. So I think largely, as a company, we've just been focused on our work and not really sweating what's going on in the market. I think separately, one of the things that we talk about is we really feel strongly that it's going to take projects like Algorand and other kind of next-gen projects to propel the market forward, and to just hope that the price of Bitcoin is going to go back up to whatever it was, $20,000? Yep. I don't know. Is sort of, you need a catalyst to get people excited. And then separately, what we've seen is that there are a lot of people building really exciting projects, a lot of companies that have existing scaled user bases, and they want to bring decentralized elements into them, or they want to redo them in a decentralized way, and there's just no tech out there for them to do it. So we are really excited by what's going on. And I think there's similarity. If you look at the internet days, Amazon went from $300 to $3. Their user growth went like this, and I don't know, they seem to be doing fine. So I think from our perspective, it's about growing the market and bringing the right tools in so that people can build great apps and continue to kind of drive the momentum that's already exists.
So when you Google Algorand, or you see Algorand mentioned in news articles, it talks a lot about the deep technical team. Obviously, having Silvio at the helm is a great asset, and also the business acumen that Steve brings is a unique combination in the space. But let's use this opportunity to talk a little bit about what is Algorand and what are you guys trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, so one, I'll just talk about the team. I think for those of you who aren't familiar with the project, please come to our website, check out who's involved. While Silvio is obviously a very well-known scientist and brilliant, we have an amazing group of researchers across cryptography, math, economics. Pablo, our chief economist, is here today, and along with several other folks. So I think that we look at that from a core research and technical side. We really want to we have a great group of business people. Not only myself, Sean Ford, our COO, was CMO at Logmein before. So I think a really credentialed group of people. And so I think it's kind of across, core technology, economics, and then separately, when you think about who's developing for blockchain right now, there's about 200,000 people that actively work on blockchain apps. There's about 29.8 million developers that do not. And so we think that we haven't even really got to the start line. And so for us, it's more, how do you take some inspiration from companies like Stripe or Twilio or others that have made it really easy for developers to engage and bring decentralized elements without having to learn all of the tech. So that, I think, is one thing that we feel really strongly about. I think secondly, just for people who don't know anything about how Algorand works, I think the most fundamental sort of innovation that we represent is that Algorand uses a novel form of cryptographic sortition to flip the script so that the users are the ones that are running the network, as opposed to miners or kind of permissioned nodes that is the case in a lot of other proof-of-stake systems. And just to put it very simply, for every round, users run a lottery on their own computer if they're online. One user wins the lottery as the block proposer. A bunch of other people win the lottery as verifiers. They vote to confirm the block. The unique thing about Algorand is that nobody knows who the proposer or the verifiers are until the block is already confirmed, because they don't need to talk to each other for those things to happen. And so as a result, the users are in control, and every single block, that committee changes. So you don't have any way of knowing who to attack ever. And because of that, it also means that it's very trivial computation. There's no power requirements. A lot of the things that have been troubling from a scalability standpoint are effectively not the case in Algorand.
So Algorand, as a layer 1 protocol, there are a few other high-profile layer 1 protocols that will likely launch in 2019. How does Algorand differentiate itself? And how do you think a little bit about the competitive landscape?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back in part to what we were talking about on the team. One of the things that we see out there is that there are a lot of people, a lot of projects that have published papers, a lot of really interesting work going on, but we don't see releasing the Algorand protocol as kind of the end. We see it as the beginning. And you guys will hear more over the coming months, but there's more innovation to come that we haven't announced yet than anything that's been announced. And so we feel strongly that, one, there has to be a public, permissionless, truly decentralized layer 1 network that people can rely on. But then second, that we need to listen to folks like you and people building companies all over the world in terms of what's needed, but that beyond that, we've also been thinking really hard about innovation, and we think that as people see the innovations that are coming, that will get people excited about not only Algorand in its existence state today, but what's coming down the road, and we'll stay engaged with our community.
Yeah, you guys have done an awesome job being very transparent about your roadmap, and I think that makes it that much easier for developers to start working and adopting, building on top of Algorand. So with that said, what are some of the applications and use cases that Algorand will be best suited to support?
Yeah, well, first, we think that there's all sorts of decentralized applications people are working on. We have no idea what the killer apps are going to be. We're not trying. We're trying to create the foundational infrastructure for those apps to be built on. So one is courting developers of all forms, regardless of whether they're companies big or small or startups, and really giving the tools. One of the things that we focused on there is having a great developer relations team. We have folks who built the both JavaScript and WebAssembly communities for Mozilla, who run our developer relations team. And so we have a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of content in addition to our developer website that we just launched recently. We'll continue to do that. So that's one pillar that we think is super important. Separately, though, we look at people looking to issue security tokens and financial instruments and other projects. And so really thinking through how we not only be a place where people develop applications, but how we really curate a whole economy from the ground up and really show that through sound economic management, the Algorand platform is good not only technically, but is also a place where people can rely on from a business and economic standpoint as well.
So, Steve, you're certainly in the flow of what's happening in crypto, one of the more high-profile people in the space, and have a front-row seat to see how this is evolving. What are some predictions or observations you have about how crypto will evolve over the next few years? Big question.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the way we think about it is sort of twofold. I think one, I brought up the internet metaphor before. It would have been a little bit hard when people are using dial-up modems and you're waiting for like your image to load for 5 minutes. That kids would be watching Netflix in the car on their tablets or phones or Facebook. So I think we'll start to see, and I think for any big movement, there's also social underpinnings that exist. And if you look today, there's an enormous concentration of power around that brings up a lot of questions around stewardship of user information and personal information. I think Google and Facebook are in the middle of trying to sort through a lot of that right now. But largely the world is one where information flows freely all over the place, with some exceptions, but money has a lot of friction. And so I think if you look out a few years, and I don't know whether it's 5 years or 10 years or whatever, I guess time will tell, we think that you need to solve some of the underlying fundamental problems that prevent money from flowing freely. And that's why we believe so strongly in decentralization and the idea of a borderless economy, because we think that can solve a lot of those issues. And just like one, I think, interesting fact, 20 years ago, there were 40 big banks in the US. Today, there are 4, and those 4 banks control double the amount of money that the 40 banks did 20 years ago. So I think it's not just centralization in terms of like people's personal information, it's also centralization of money and a lot of things. And I think that's what gives rise to social movements. And I think if you look at virtually anybody under 35, there's for sure a disproportionate amount of folks that don't really trust a lot of the institutions that people are just used to around here. In other parts of the world, over 2 billion people have no access to modern financial systems at all, which is like great social injustice, we think, that can be resolved by technology like this. So I think there's a lot of things that are going to develop over time, but for sure, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens as platforms like ours start to grow up and are able to reduce some of the friction that exists in there today.
So if the audience wants to learn more about Algorand, what should they do?
We should go to algren.com, our website. We have a lot of materials on there. There's a lot of videos, especially of Silvio, describing kind of the technical details of the protocol. We have many different papers. We also, just as kind of a follow-up, we contribute to a number of different standards efforts. Just last week, Sergey, who's our head cryptographer, submitted to IEEE a draft proposal around BLS signatures. That's something that we're working with a number of different projects on. One of our other cryptographers is also a co-contributor on 4 of, I believe, 12 of the current proposed post-quantum cryptography standards. So a lot of information that you can find over there. We've had a lot of really interesting announcements, and we just had a peer-reviewed paper come out on our light client protocol. So please go check out a lot of information both about the project and our ideas on the business side, but also for sure a lot of technical information there.
Steve, it's been amazing to watch you build out a world-class team and to continue to push Algorand forward. But in the spirit of openness, we'd love to open it up to 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If anyone wants to ask something to Steve.
When do you think it'll go live?
Well, we're not saying an exact date, but the plan is first half of this year.
As a one of the new public chain, right? You talk about you care about developer adoption. So I want to know, because today we already have other public chain basically has a bunch of developer work on top of that. As a new public chain, what do you want to do differently compared with, for example, like Ether or other public chain in terms of developer adoption and how to win their heart?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, and it's definitely been a multifaceted approach. I think if you look at just at a basic level, and first of all, I think if you look at the community that Ethereum has built, it's amazing. They have a tremendous developer community, a lot of interest in the market, and a lot of innovation has come out there. I think one of the things we've done is really look at it from kind of a few different perspectives. One is go out and talk to a lot of people. For any of you who followed us, Silvio's been literally around the world 5 times in the past 6 months. We've presented to tens of thousands of people at meetups and conferences, and so really try to get out in events like this and get in front of as many people and raise awareness in a grassroots way. The second is, in conjunction with the launch of our developer website, we'll also be launching our testnet to the public soon, really going out more through kind of big developer channels and getting people interested. And then the last one, though, is also working closely with projects that are building their own protocols or building on top of a platform like ours. We're not trying to solve all the world's problems ourselves, and so we want a whole group of people in the community. And by the way, community, I would say that North America is probably, from our perspective, the smallest market. Or the smallest one that we're focused on in terms of crypto and blockchain. We spend a lot of time in Asia. The Algorand network will launch via Singapore, and we believe really strongly in kind of cutting across all different regions and understanding. So there's no one magic bullet here, other than we have a flywheel going to make sure we get in front of as many people as we can.
I feel like the 3 things just mentioned is very similar to what, for example, research doing for the ecosystem, right? So, because you guys, Algorand has very secret sauce. I hope you also have secret sauce for developer adoption, which will make it guys really successful in the future.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, we haven't shared everything that we're doing yet, so we will soon.
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah. So one thing that I understand about Algorand is that common users can act as stakeholders and they can run nodes and then verify transactions. So what is your how does your token economics allow these nodes to remain online at all times and incentivize them to verify your transactions?
Yeah, well, I guess a very simple way, we our incentives will incent all users to be part of the system. We haven't shared exactly what those are yet, but in the coming weeks, we'll have more information about our incentives, and we have, I think, a strategy that people will find interesting and definitely rewards not only end users for being part of the system, but also people who are running infrastructure, running nodes, relaying traffic, and propagating blocks. So you can stay tuned for more there, but definitely put a lot of thinking. And I think it goes back to the thing you mentioned before. We will be the first public permissionless proof of stake platform to launch. And so there's a lot of considerations that go into that from a safety, security, liveness standpoint. And so bootstrapping the network is definitely something that we put a lot of thought into.
Great, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you having me.